I want you to stop for a moment and think about your morning routine. You wake up, maybe you use the bathroom, maybe you pour a cup of coffee, and somewhere in that first hour, on the kitchen counter, next to the sink, in that little weekly pill organizer your daughter bought you, you take your blood pressure medication. Every day, without fail. And you should. You absolutely should. Because uncontrolled high blood pressure is one of the most dangerous conditions a person over 60 can have. I've seen what it does to the human body. I've held hearts that have been working against catastrophic pressure for years. I've tried to repair blood vessels that ruptured in the middle of the night, while people were sleeping peacefully in their own beds. But here is what I've been thinking about for the past several years. The question that I wish I had asked my patients far sooner than I did. Not what medication are you taking, not how much, not even are you taking it consistently. The question is, when are you taking it? After more than 800 open-heart surgeries, after 3 decades of watching people do everything right on paper and still end up on my operating table, after reviewing data from some of the largest cardiovascular studies ever conducted, I am convinced that the timing of blood pressure medication is one of the most important and most consistently ignored variables in hypertension treatment today. And in the next 25 minutes, I'm going to show you exactly why. I'm going to show you what your body does to your blood pressure while you sleep. I'm going to show you why taking your pill at the wrong time of day may be leaving you almost completely unprotected during the most dangerous hours of the night. And I'm going to give you a clear, concrete protocol. 5 specific things you can do starting today to protect yourself more effectively. Stay with me, because what I'm about to show you is something most people on blood pressure medication have never heard, and it might be the most important thing you watch this year. I want to tell you about a patient I'll call Gerald. Gerald was 68 years old when I first reviewed his case. Retired civil engineer, the kind of man who built bridges for a living and applied the same meticulous precision to everything in his life, including his health. He color-coded his weekly pill organizer. He kept a health journal. He walked 2 miles every morning after breakfast. When he was diagnosed with hypertension at the age of 61, he treated it like a project to be managed. He read everything his doctor gave him. He eliminated salt from his diet. He cut back on alcohol. He bought a blood pressure cuff for his home and took a reading every single morning, right before breakfast, right after waking, and logged the numbers in a small notebook he kept in the kitchen drawer. For 7 years, those numbers looked acceptable. His doctor was pleased at every checkup. Gerald was pleased. His wife, Martha, told me later that they had both stopped worrying about it, that it felt managed, under control. They had dinner together the Tuesday night it happened. Nothing unusual. Soup, some bread, the evening news. Gerald said he was a little tired. He went to bed early, around 9:30. Martha stayed up to finish reading. She found him at 4:20 in the morning. Gerald had suffered a hemorrhagic stroke, a burst blood vessel deep in the left hemisphere of his brain while he was sleeping. The vessel had been under enormous pressure, likely for hours, possibly for years, in those pre-dawn hours when no one was watching and no measurement was being taken. He survived. But the man who came home from the rehabilitation facility 8 weeks later was fundamentally changed. The engineer who had designed load-bearing structures for a living now struggled to recall the word for a simple object. The man who had walked 2 miles every morning moved slowly now, with a cane, careful of every step. I went back through Gerald's records carefully. His morning blood pressure readings, the ones he had logged so faithfully for 7 years, were consistently in an acceptable range. His daytime clinic measurements were fine. His doctor had every reason to believe the medication was working. What nobody had ever measured, what nobody had ever thought to look for, was what Gerald's blood pressure was doing at 2 in the morning, at 3, at 4. Because those numbers, the ones hidden in the dark, in the hours no one was watching, were telling an entirely different story. The warning signs were there, every single night. But Gerald, like most people, had no idea what his body was doing while he slept. I need to explain something to you that most doctors don't take the time to explain. And once you understand this, you will never think about blood pressure the same way again. Your blood pressure is not a number. It is a rhythm. I know that word, Rhythm sounds like something a cardiologist says before showing you a complicated graph. But I want you to think of it the way I think about it after 30 years in the operating room. Your body is a mechanical system, a magnificent, intricate, living machine. And like all machines, it runs on cycles. Your entire cardiovascular system is governed by a biological clock. Scientists call it the circadian rhythm, from the Latin meaning around the day. This internal timer runs on roughly a 24-hour cycle, and it controls almost everything your body does. When you feel alert, when you feel drowsy, when your digestion is most active, when your immune system is most aggressive, and, critically, what your blood pressure is doing at any given hour of the day or night. Think of your circulatory system the way I think of it in surgery, a vast network of pressurized hoses. Some as wide as your thumb, the great vessels near your heart. Others thinner than a strand of hair, deep in your brain tissue, your kidneys, the back of your eyes. Every one of those hoses is under pressure 24 hours a day, every day of your life. In a healthy body, something remarkable happens at night. As you fall asleep and your activity drops, your brain signals the cardiovascular system to reduce the load. Hormones shift. The nervous system moves from its daytime fight-or-flight state into its nighttime rest and repair mode. Those hoses, those arteries and arterioles throughout your body, are supposed to relax. The pressure inside them is supposed to drop. In people with a healthy cardiovascular system, nighttime blood pressure typically falls between 10 and 20% below daytime levels. Cardiologists call these people dippers because their pressure curve dips at night the way a healthy biological system should. During those quiet hours, the body repairs endothelial cells, the delicate lining of the blood vessels. It reduces inflammation. It processes metabolic waste. The heart gets a partial rest from the constant workload of daytime pressure. This nightly drop is not a luxury. It is essential maintenance. It is when the system heals itself. But here is where the story changes, and where Gerald's story begins to make sense. Research now shows that a substantial portion of people with hypertension, estimates range from 25 to 40%, depending on the population studied, do not experience this nighttime dip, for reasons that include kidney disease, sleep apnea, diabetes, advanced age, and chronic stress. Their vascular system never fully shifts into that low-pressure nighttime mode. Their blood pressure stays elevated through the night, or drops only slightly. And in the most dangerous cases, it actually rises in the hours just before dawn. These individuals are called non-dippers. And non-dippers carry a risk profile that is dramatically worse than people whose pressure follows the normal pattern, even when their daytime numbers look perfectly controlled. Here is what makes this so dangerous. Most blood pressure measurement happens during the day, at the doctor's office, at home, in the morning. The nighttime hours, the exact hours when non-dippers are under the greatest vascular stress, are almost never measured in routine clinical care. So a non-dipper can have morning readings that appear acceptable, receive a clean bill of health at every checkup, and still be suffering dangerous pressure surges in the silent hours of 2, 3, and 4 a.m. This is exactly what was happening inside Gerald's blood vessels, night after night, for years, while his morning log said everything was fine. Now, here is where the timing of medication becomes critical. Most blood pressure pills are taken in the morning. This is the convention. It's what doctors tell patients, what pharmacists advise, what the bottle often says. And for some medications, in some patients, morning dosing makes sense. The drug peaks during the day when physical activity is highest, and then gradually declines through the afternoon and evening. But here is the problem. By midnight, by 2 a.m., by the time the body is at its most vulnerable, the medication taken 18 or 20 hours earlier has often significantly declined in effectiveness. The protective coverage has worn thin precisely when the non-dipper's pressure is climbing. In 2010, a landmark clinical study called the MAPEC trial, published in the journal Chronobiology International, set out to test this directly. Researchers followed more than 2,000 patients with hypertension over a median period of 5.5 years. Half the patients took all their blood pressure medication in the morning. The other half took at least one of their medications at bedtime. The results were striking. Patients who took at least one medication at bedtime had significantly better nighttime blood pressure control. Their pressure dipped more during sleep the way a healthy system should. And over the course of the study, the bedtime dosing group experienced a 69% reduction in major cardiovascular events, including heart attack, stroke, and cardiovascular death, compared to the morning dosing group. That number stopped me when I first read it. Nearly 70%. The MAPEC trial was later followed by an even larger study, the Hygia chronotherapy trial, which followed more than 19,000 patients across Spain over a period of 6 years. It confirmed and expanded the findings. Patients who took their antihypertensive medication at bedtime had significantly lower rates of heart attack, stroke, heart failure, and cardiovascular mortality. Their nighttime blood pressure was better controlled, and their morning pressure surge, that dangerous spike that occurs in the first hours after waking when the body floods with cortisol and adrenaline, was substantially blunted. Let me explain that morning surge because it matters enormously. When you wake up in the morning, your body does not ease gently into the day. It launches. Cortisol, your primary stress hormone, begins rising sharply about an hour before you even open your eyes. Adrenaline surges, your heart rate accelerates, your blood vessels tighten, blood pressure climbs, sometimes dramatically, in that first 1 to 2 hours after waking. This is why the window between roughly 6 a.m. and 10 a.m. carries a disproportionately high incidence of heart attacks and strokes. Not because something unusual happens, but because the body's own normal morning activation places enormous stress on a cardiovascular system that may already be compromised. For a person whose medication peaked at 9 a.m. the previous morning and has been declining for 20 hours, that morning surge hits an arterial system with very little pharmaceutical protection. If that same person had taken at least one medication at bedtime, if the drug had been working actively through the night, controlling the 3 a.m. pressure, blunting the pre-dawn cortisol surge, the outcome can be profoundly different. Stay with me, because what I want to tell you next, about which specific medications respond best to this timing shift, this is the part that most people miss entirely. Not all blood pressure medications behave the same way with nighttime dosing. ACE inhibitors, drugs like lisinopril, ramipril, and enalapril, have shown some of the most consistent benefit from bedtime administration in the research. ARBs, losartan, valsartan, olmesartan, similarly perform well when taken at night. Calcium channel blockers like amlodipine, because of their very long half-life, tend to perform similarly regardless of timing, but in some patients still show incremental benefit when shifted to evening. Diuretics, water pills, are generally kept in the morning because taking them at night means getting up to urinate repeatedly, which disrupts sleep and can paradoxically raise nighttime blood pressure through sleep fragmentation. This nuance is exactly why this conversation needs to happen with your own physician. Not because the science is unclear, it is remarkably clear, but because which of your medications to shift and how depends on your specific drug regimen, your kidney function, your sleep patterns, and your complete medical history. I want to tell you about a man I'll call Robert. Robert was 72 when I first consulted on his case. Retired firefighter, broad shoulders, big hands, the kind of man who never went to a doctor until something was truly wrong. His brother had suffered a stroke at 69. That was what finally brought Robert in. He'd been on blood pressure medication for 6 years, 2 different drugs, an ACE inhibitor and a low-dose diuretic. He took both every morning, religiously, at 7 a.m. His clinic readings were consistently in the borderline range, not perfect, but not alarming enough that anyone had changed his treatment. But Robert had noticed something. He'd wake up at 3 or 4 in the morning sometimes, feeling strange. A heaviness behind his eyes, a slight throbbing at his temples. He'd mentioned it to his doctor, who had suggested it might be tension headaches or perhaps mild sleep apnea. Nobody had suggested measuring his blood pressure at that hour. I ordered a 24-hour ambulatory blood pressure monitor. This is a device worn on the arm like a cuff. It inflates automatically every 30 minutes throughout the day and night and records a complete pressure profile over a full 24-hour cycle, including during sleep. It is one of the most valuable diagnostic tools in cardiovascular medicine, and it is drastically underused in routine care. When Robert's results came back, the picture was unambiguous. At 3 a.m., at the exact hour he'd been waking with that strange heaviness, his systolic blood pressure was 171. At 4 a.m., it was 168. At 6 a.m., just before he woke up naturally, it was 176. His morning readings at home, taken after waking, after coffee, after his body had already begun to stabilize, averaged around 138. That was the number his doctor had been treating. The number at 3 a.m. was a completely different reality. We coordinated with his primary physician to make a single change: move his ACE inhibitor from morning to bedtime. The diuretic stayed in the morning. Nothing else changed. Not his dosage, not his diet, not his exercise. His 90-day follow-up monitor told a different story entirely. His 3 a.m. readings had dropped to an average of 141. His morning surge was substantially blunted. His overnight average systolic pressure had fallen by nearly 14 millimeters of mercury. His cardiologist told me she had not seen that kind of improvement from a medication change without actually changing the medication itself, just the timing. Robert told me, and I remember this clearly, he said, "I've been taking that pill for 6 years. Nobody ever asked me what time I took it. It wasn't too late for him, and I want to be very clear about something. This kind of intervention is not reserved for people in crisis. It is available to anyone who is currently managing hypertension and willing to have an informed conversation with their physician. If you are 60, 65, 70 years old and you are on blood pressure medication, this is a conversation you can have at your next appointment. You don't have to wait for a warning sign. You don't have to wait for a 3 a.m. wake-up call that feels like something more serious." Robert's story did not start with a stroke. It ended without one. Because someone finally asked the right question at the right time. Let me give you something you can actually use. 5 specific steps, not vague recommendations, not eat better and exercise more, but 5 concrete actions that you can begin implementing immediately, starting with a conversation you can have this week. Number 1. Request a 24-hour ambulatory blood pressure monitor. Here is what this matters. A single blood pressure reading, whether it's taken at a clinic or at home first thing in the morning, gives you a snapshot of one moment in a 24-hour cycle. It tells you almost nothing about what happens at 2 a.m., at 4 a.m., during the pre-dawn cortisol surge. The ambulatory monitor gives your doctor the complete picture. It identifies non-dippers. It reveals nocturnal hypertension. It shows the morning surge. Without this data, your doctor is making treatment decisions based on a fraction of your actual blood pressure reality. Ask for this test by name at your next appointment. If your doctor is unfamiliar with it or dismissive, ask again, or seek a second opinion from a cardiologist. You can begin this process this week. Number 2. Have an explicit conversation about bedtime dosing. Here is why this matters. The research supporting chronotherapy, timing medications to align with the body's biological rhythms, is not new, and it is not fringe. The MAPEC and Hygia trials involved tens of thousands of patients followed for years. The findings have been published in peer-reviewed journals and are well within the scope of standard cardiovascular medicine. You are not asking for an experimental treatment. You are asking your doctor to consider a well-documented, evidence-based modification to when you take an existing medication. Come prepared. Mention the Hygia chronotherapy trial. Ask specifically, based on my medication regimen, is there any reason I couldn't try taking one of my blood pressure drugs at bedtime? A good physician will engage with that question thoughtfully. You can bring this up at your very next visit. Number 3. Begin tracking your blood pressure at night, not just in the morning. Here is why this matters. The morning reading you've been taking is valuable, but it is only half the story. Begin adding a nighttime reading, taken right before bed. And if you wake during the night for any reason, take a reading then as well. Log every reading with a timestamp. Within 2 to 4 weeks, you will have data that no annual checkup can produce. a real-world picture of your pressure across different times of day and night. Bring this log to your doctor. This information has genuine clinical value. Start tonight. Number 4. Never alter your medication schedule without medical supervision. I want to be unambiguous about this. Everything I've shared today is designed to make you a more informed, more empowered patient, not to replace your physician's guidance. Blood pressure medications interact with kidney function, with other drugs, with your specific physiology in ways that require professional evaluation. If you move a medication to bedtime without telling your doctor, and that medication causes an unexpected drop in overnight pressure that affects kidney perfusion, that is a risk. The goal is not self-treatment. The goal is an informed conversation that your doctor and you have together, with the evidence in front of both of you. Do not change anything alone. Bring this video, bring the studies, bring your questions, and have the conversation with your doctor's full involvement. Number 5. Protect the morning hours deliberately. Here is why this matters even if you do nothing else. Regardless of when you take your medication, the window between waking and 2 hours after is when your cardiovascular system is under its greatest daily stress. The cortisol surge is real. The morning pressure spike is real. And there are things you can do, starting tomorrow morning, to reduce the physiological load during that window. Do not exercise intensely within the first 30 minutes of waking. Let your body's pressure stabilize before you add physical demand. Drink a full glass of water before coffee. Mild dehydration in the morning increases blood viscosity and cardiovascular strain. Avoid rushing. The psychological stress of a frantic morning routine activates the same adrenaline pathways that raise blood pressure. If you take any medication in the morning, take it early, before coffee, before food, so it begins working as quickly as possible. And if you experience any unusual symptoms in those morning hours, sudden headache, visual disturbance, one-sided weakness, difficulty finding words, slurred speech, treat it as an emergency. Do not wait to see if it passes. Call 911. Time is brain tissue. And there's one more thing I want you to do. It doesn't involve medication or monitors or morning routines. It involves a conversation. Tell the people you live with, or the people you see regularly, what the signs of a hypertensive stroke look like. Facial drooping, arm weakness, speech difficulty, sudden severe headache unlike any before. These are the warning signs of a brain vessel under catastrophic pressure. The person most likely to recognize those signs at 4 a.m. is not a physician. It is the person in the bed next to you, or the one whose bedroom is down the hall. Make sure they know what to look for. Make sure they know to act immediately. Because in a hemorrhagic stroke, every minute of delay is minutes of irreversible neurological damage. This conversation costs nothing, and it could save everything. Gerald took his blood pressure pill every morning for 7 years. He logged his readings in a small notebook in the kitchen drawer. He walked his 2 miles. He cut the salt from his diet. He did every single thing that the medicine of his era told him to do. And he did it faithfully, consistently, without complaint. And none of it protected him at 4:20 in the morning. Because nobody, in 7 years of checkups, in 7 years of prescriptions, in 7 years of follow-up appointments, nobody had ever asked him when he took his pill. I don't tell you Gerald's story to frighten you. I've been in medicine long enough to know that fear alone does not change behavior. It only exhausts people. I tell you Gerald's story because I believe you deserve to know what took him. I believe you deserve the complete picture, not just the fraction of it that fits neatly into a 15-minute appointment. You are not a passive recipient of whatever your physician happens to mention. You are a participant in your own health. And the most powerful thing a patient over 60 can do, in my experience, after everything I've seen, is ask the question that nobody thought to ask before. When should I take this? That question, asked at the right moment in the right office, might be the difference between a morning you wake up to and one you don't. So take what you learned today. Write it down if you need to. Bring it to your next appointment with your doctor. and share this video. Not because I'm asking for views, but because someone you know is probably taking their blood pressure pill at the wrong time right now. Someone you love. Someone whose name you could type into a text message in the next 60 seconds. Send it to them. You might be the reason they ask the question. And I'll see you in the next one. Because what I want to talk about next week, it involves a specific deficiency that research now links directly to arterial stiffness, nocturnal hypertension, and accelerated cardiovascular aging. It is extraordinarily common in people over 60. It is almost never tested for in routine blood panels. And the answer is not what most people expect. Until then, protect your heart, protect your sleep, and protect the people you love by making sure they know what you now know.